Gaslight wasn't just a psychological thriller, it was a cinematic masterclass in manipulation, a film so perfectly crafted in its depiction of psychological torture that it didn't just entertain audiences, it gave a name to a crime. Behind the fog-shrouded streets and the gaslit interiors of the London townhouse lay a production as fraught with tension as the film itself, a battleground of clashing egos, suppressed art, and an actress so consumed by her role, she nearly broke under the weight of it. What audiences saw as a suspenseful tale of a woman's descent into madness was, in reality, a reflection of the very real madness happening behind the scenes, a dark mirror of manipulation and artistic obsession. Today, we're turning up the gaslight to reveal the secrets hidden in the shadows of this Hollywood classic. Here are 18 weird facts about Gaslight, and stick around for a bonus fact about the original film that Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer tried to make disappear forever. Number 18. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer suppressed an earlier film version. The 1944 film wasn't the first adaptation of Patrick Hamilton's play Gaslight, but Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer went to extraordinary lengths to make sure audiences thought it was. In 1940, a British film version of the play, simply titled Gaslight, was released and was met with critical acclaim. When Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer bought the rights to produce an American version, they didn't just buy the play, they bought the rights to the 1940 film as well, with a diabolical purpose. The studio's head, Louis B. Mayer, made a calculated and ruthless decision to have all known prints of the British film systematically located and destroyed. The goal was to eliminate any competition and ensure that their version, starring their massive star Ingrid Bergman, would be the definitive and only version audiences could see. For decades, the British film was considered lost, a cinematic ghost erased from history by a corporate power play. This wasn't just a business decision, it was an act of cultural vandalism, a dark chapter in Hollywood history where art was sacrificed for commercial supremacy. Number 17. Ingrid Bergman suffered a real mental breakdown. The film wasn't just a performance for Ingrid Bergman, it was a psychological ordeal that left deep and lasting scars. Bergman, a dedicated method actor, immersed herself so completely in the role of Paula Alquist, a woman being systematically driven insane by her husband, that the lines between reality and fiction blurred in a terrifying way. She would spend hours on set in a state of genuine anxiety and confusion, her hands trembling, her voice wavering, her eyes wide with a fear that was not entirely manufactured. After the director, George Cukor, yelled, "Cut!" she often couldn't snap out of character, requiring long periods to recover. The emotional and mental strain was so immense that her co-workers reported she would weep uncontrollably between takes. The performance wasn't just acting, it was a raw, public display of psychological fragility, a testament to her talent, but also a warning of the dangers of diving too deep into such a dark, turbulent role. Number 16. Charles Boyer's ego clashed with the director. The film's villain, the sinister Gregory Anton, wasn't just a character, it was a battleground for two massive egos. Charles Boyer was one of the biggest stars in the world, a romantic icon known for his suave, continental charm. He was initially reluctant to play such an irredeemable villain and, when he accepted, he fought constantly with director George Cukor over the character's motivation. Boyer wanted to add layers of complexity and even a hint of sympathy to Gregory, while Cukor insisted he be a pure, unadulterated monster. Their arguments became legendary on the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer lot, with Boyer trying to soften the character's edges and Cukor relentlessly pushing him to be more cruel, more manipulative, more of a psychological brute. The conflict wasn't just creative. It was a war for the soul of the character, a struggle between an actor protecting his star persona and a director demanding absolute fidelity to his dark, uncompromising vision. Number 15. Angela Lansbury's terrifying debut at 17. The film's cynical, conniving maid, Nancy, wasn't just a breakout role. It was a shockingly mature debut for an actress who was barely old enough to drive. Angela Lansbury was only 17 years old when she was cast as the hard-bitten, world-weary housemaid who is in league with her master, Gregory. Her performance is so chillingly effective, so devoid of youthful innocence, that it terrified audiences and even her own co-stars. Ingrid Bergman later said that Lansbury was so convincing in her villainy that it made her uncomfortable on set. To embody such a jaded, amoral character at such a young age required a level of technical and emotional skill that is almost unheard of. The role wasn't just a debut, it was a revelation, a arrival of a major talent who could play corrupt and ancient while still being a teenager. Her Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress wasn't just an honor, it was a proclamation that a new, formidable force had arrived in Hollywood. Number 14. The film launched a psychological phenomenon. Gaslight didn't just entertain audiences, it fundamentally changed the cultural lexicon. The film was so popular and its depiction of psychological manipulation so powerful that the verb to gaslight entered the popular vocabulary as a term for deliberately manipulating someone into questioning their own sanity. The film's success created a national fascination with the concept, spawning newspaper articles, radio discussions, and even a temporary paranoia where people across the country began to closely watch their homes' gaslights, fearing they might be dimming without their knowledge. The film wasn't just a piece of entertainment, it was a cultural event, a cinematic creation that escaped the confines of the screen and became a permanent part of the English language, a dark legacy that endures to this day as the perfect word for a very specific and insidious form of abuse. Number 13. Joseph Cotton's awkward loyalty dilemma. The film's hero, the dapper Scotland Yard Inspector Brian Cameron, wasn't just a character. He was a man caught in a tricky web of Hollywood loyalty. Joseph Cotton was a close friend and frequent collaborator of director Victor Fleming, the man who had notoriously replaced George Cukor on the set of Gone with the Wind years earlier. Now, Cotton found himself working for Cukor, the very director who had been so publicly humiliated. The situation was incredibly awkward. Cotton, ever the professional, remained loyal to his friend Fleming but gave his full commitment to Cukor's direction. The unspoken tension on set was a palpable undercurrent, a ghost of a past Hollywood feud. Cotton's performance wasn't just acting, it was a diplomatic mission, a masterclass in navigating the treacherous social politics of the studio system while trying to save the damsel in distress. Number 12. The set was a physical prison. The film's oppressive, claustrophobic atmosphere wasn't just created with clever lighting and camera angles. It was built into the very architecture of the set. Director George Cukor and production designer Cedric Gibbons designed the interior of the London townhouse to be a physical prison for Paula. The ceilings were deliberately built lower than normal. The doorways were narrower, and the furniture was oversized and crammed into the rooms, creating a sense of being trapped and smothered. The famous attic, where Paula is forbidden to go, was a masterpiece of oppressive design, a dark, cluttered space designed to look like a physical manifestation of a troubled mind. The set wasn't just a backdrop, it was an active participant in the psychological torture, a cage that the audience could feel closing in around the characters with every passing scene. Number 11. The Hays Code censors nearly gutted the film. The film's depiction of psychological cruelty and marital abuse was so dark that it ran afoul of the notoriously restrictive Hays Code, the set of moral guidelines that governed Hollywood filmmaking for decades. The censors were deeply concerned about the film's subject matter, fearing that it was too bleak and that it showed a marriage in a profoundly negative light. They demanded changes to soften the horror and make the story more palatable. However, the filmmakers, led by the wily George Cukor, engaged in a brilliant campaign of misdirection. They framed the film not as a dark psychological drama, but as a standard whodunit mystery, emphasizing the detective story elements to appease the censors while smuggling the more disturbing themes of mental torture past them. The film wasn't just a thriller, it was a clever act of cinematic subversion, a dark story told in plain sight by hiding its true nature behind a conventional genre mask. Number 10. Ingrid Bergman's Oscar acceptance was a scandal. Ingrid Bergman's win for Best Actress for Gaslight wasn't just a career milestone, it was the center of a Hollywood scandal that had the town buzzing. In 1944, Bergman was also nominated for Best Actress for her performance in The Bells of St. Mary's. It was considered a major faux pas, if not an outright violation of the rules, for an actor to be nominated in the same category for two different films in the same year. The industry was divided. Some saw it as hubris, others as a testament to her incredible talent. When she won for Gaslight, the victory was tinged with controversy. To make matters even more dramatic, she was not present at the ceremony. She was in New York, about to give birth to her daughter, Pia. She gave her acceptance speech via a live, crackling radio broadcast, her voice filled with emotion, a new mother accepting Hollywood's highest honor from thousands of miles away. The Oscar wasn't just an award, it was a national event, a moment of triumph and controversy that cemented her status as a Hollywood legend. Number 9. The play's author had a tragic life. The film's source material, Patrick Hamilton's 1938 play Gaslight, wasn't just a work of fiction, it was a product of a mind that was intimately acquainted with darkness and despair. Hamilton was a brilliant but deeply troubled British playwright who struggled with alcoholism and severe depression for most of his life. His own life was marked by financial hardship, failed relationships, and a profound sense of alienation. Many critics see the themes of psychological torment, manipulation, and a sense of being trapped in a suffocating environment as a direct reflection of Hamilton's own inner demons. He knew what it felt like to be haunted, to feel one's sanity slipping away. The play wasn't just a suspense story, it was a cry from the heart, a piece of writing that channeled the author's real-life pain into a work of art. The success of Gaslight brought him fame and fortune, but it couldn't save him from his personal tragedies, and he eventually drank himself to an early grave. Number 8. The film's sound was an unseen character. The film's iconic sound design, the hissing of the gas, the creaking of the floorboards, the tinkling of the piano in the empty attic, wasn't just background noise, it was a meticulously crafted element of psychological warfare. The sound team, led by director Douglas Shearer, worked tirelessly to create an auditory landscape that was as unsettling as the visual one. The sound of the gaslight's flickering was not a simple effect, it was a carefully modulated hiss that was designed to be both comforting and menacing. The footsteps upstairs were amplified to sound heavy and deliberate, a constant, oppressive presence. The sound wasn't just accompanying the action, it was a character in itself, an unseen antagonist working in tandem with Gregory to break Paula's spirit, a symphony of suspense that made the audience feel every bit as trapped and paranoid as the film's heroine. Number 7. The film saved George Cukor's career. By 1944, director George Cukor, once one of Hollywood's most respected auteurs, was in a professional slump. He had been fired from Gone with the Wind 5 years earlier, a humiliating public setback, and his subsequent films had not been major commercial successes. Gaslight was seen by many at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer as a make-or-break project for him. The studio entrusted him with their prestigious A-list properties, including Bergman and Boyer, but the pressure was immense. Cukor knew he had to deliver a masterpiece. He poured all his formidable talent into the film, focusing on the psychological nuances and drawing out career-defining performances from his cast. The film's critical and commercial triumph was a personal victory, a spectacular comeback that re-established Cukor as one of the industry's top directors. The film wasn't just a success, it was a redemption, a brilliant vindication for a director who had been left for dead by the very town that now celebrated him. Number 6. The film's torture scenes were too real. The scenes where Gregory psychologically tortures Paula were so intense and realistically portrayed that they were genuinely disturbing to the cast and crew. Charles Boyer's method of breaking down his wife, hiding things, questioning her memory, isolating her from the world, was so effective that it created a palpable sense of unease on the set. In one scene where Gregory accuses Paula of stealing a brooch, Bergman's reaction of frantic, desperate panic was so authentic that the crew fell silent. Some crew members admitted that watching her being manipulated on screen was uncomfortable, even sickening. The scenes weren't just acted. They were reenactments of psychological abuse, so powerfully performed that they blurred the line between cinema and reality, making the set a genuinely uncomfortable place to be. Number 5. The film's ending was changed for American audiences. The film's final, triumphant confrontation wasn't the ending that Patrick Hamilton originally wrote for his play. In the original stage version, the conclusion is much more ambiguous and psychologically complex. Gregory is not simply unmasked and defeated. He manages to maintain a degree of his manipulative control over Paula until the very end, leaving her ultimate salvation more uncertain. For the 1944 film, however, the studio and director George Cukor decided on a more definitive, satisfyingly cathartic conclusion. They wanted the villain to be clearly vanquished and the heroine to be completely and undeniably freed. The ending wasn't just a creative choice, it was a commercial one, a classic Hollywood simplification that ensured the audience left with a sense of closure and justice, rather than the lingering unease of the original work. Number 4. The film's costumes were a tool of oppression. The stunning costumes worn by Ingrid Bergman weren't just fashion, they were a crucial part of the film's psychological strategy. Legendary costume designer Irene Sharaff created a series of beautiful, yet increasingly constricting, outfits for Paula to wear as her mental state deteriorates. In the beginning, her clothes are elegant and free-flowing. As Gregory's control tightens, her costumes become more restrictive, with high collars, heavy fabrics, and dark colors that visually represent her imprisonment. The famous scene where she is forced to wear a glittering gown to a party she doesn't want to attend is the ultimate example of this. The dress is beautiful, but for Paula, it's a costume in a prison play, a tool of her husband's manipulation designed to show her off while simultaneously crushing her spirit. The costumes weren't just clothing, they were a visual language of her descent. Number 3. The film's hidden motif. Throughout the film, there is a subtle but powerful visual motif of things being hidden. Objects are constantly being hidden from Paula. The pictures, the watch, the letter, which drives her to question her sanity. But director George Cukor also used the camera to create a sense of hidden spaces and voyeurism. He often shoots characters through doorways, behind furniture, or reflected in mirrors, suggesting that nothing is quite as it seems and that someone is always watching. This visual theme reinforces the film's central idea of a reality that is being deliberately concealed. The camera isn't just an observer, it is an accomplice to Gregory's gaslighting. Always peeking, always hiding, always making the audience feel like they are in on the secret, complicit in the psychological game being played. Number 2. The film almost starred a different leading lady. While it's impossible to imagine Gaslight without Ingrid Bergman's iconic Oscar-winning performance, she was not the first choice for the role of Paula. Initially, the studio had wanted to cast Hedy Lamarr, the glamorous Austrian-born actress who was one of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's biggest stars. However, Lamar's persona was that of a seductive, exotic femme fatale, which was ultimately deemed wrong for the role of the vulnerable, fragile Paula. The producers decided that Bergman, with her girl-next-door quality and her proven ability to portray deep emotional turmoil, was a much better fit. The casting change wasn't just a simple decision. It was a pivotal moment that defined the entire film. Bergman's relatable vulnerability makes the psychological horror feel more immediate and personal, turning the film from a simple thriller into a deeply empathetic character study. Number 1. The film's real, life inspiration was a true crime. The story of a man attempting to drive his wife insane to inherit her fortune wasn't just a product of Patrick Hamilton's imagination, it was directly inspired by a notorious real-life case. In the early 20th century, a man named George Joseph Smith was executed in England for murdering several of his wives by drowning them in bathtubs. While the methods were different, the core of his crime was the same: a charming husband who would marry women, gain their trust, ensuring their lives for large sums of money, and then murder them. The case was a media sensation in Britain and fascinated Hamilton, who used the idea of a husband as a hidden predator as the jumping-off point for his play. The film wasn't just a work of fiction, it was a dark echo of a true crime, a chilling reminder that the most monstrous acts of psychological and physical abuse often happen behind closed doors, disguised as love. Bonus fact: the lost British film resurfaced. For decades, the 1940 British version of Gaslight was one of the most sought-after lost films in cinema history, a victim of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's aggressive suppression campaign. Film historians and enthusiasts believed that all prints had been destroyed, as per Louis B. Mayer's orders. However, in the late 1970s, a complete 35mm print of the film was discovered in the United States at the Wisconsin Center for Film and Theater Research. It turned out that one print had escaped the studio's purge and had been sitting in an archive unnoticed for years. The discovery was a monumental event in film history. The British film was finally restored and screened for new audiences, who could now compare it directly to the more famous 1944 version. The lost film wasn't just found, it was resurrected, a cinematic ghost brought back to life to challenge the supremacy of the Hollywood giant that had tried to erase it from existence, finally allowing the world to see the original vision of Patrick Hamilton's brilliant play. Gaslight endures not just as a masterful thriller, but as a cultural touchstone, a film that gave a name to a fear as old as time itself. Its legacy is a testament to the power of a perfectly told story, brought to life by a director at the top of his game and a cast delivering career-defining performances. The darkness behind its creation, the suppressed art, the psychological toll, the clashing egos, only serves to make its brilliance shine even brighter. It reminds us that the most terrifying monsters are not the ones that lurk in the shadows, but the ones who share our beds, who smile at us while dimming the lights, who convince us that our own minds are the enemy. It is a perfect film, a timeless, chilling, and unforgettable journey into the heart of darkness. Like and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes revelations that change how you see your favorite movies forever. In the words of Gregory Anton, "I knew all along you'd do it. And we, the audience, knew all along we'd be captivated."